We are recording. The red light's on. Hey, I'm David Brownstein. Welcome to the 2020 Music Industry Evolution Summit. My guest today is Elliot Towsley.
Yeah, David, right? What's up, man? How you doing?
Good, man. Hi, great. So glad you could be here.
I'm happy to be here.
Cool. I'm going to read your bio so people get a little sense of you and your thing, and then we'll get into it. Elliot Towsley was born and raised in Western New Hampshire, studied business at Peter T. Paul School of Economics and Finance, worked at a Fortune 500 insurance company in marketing development for 4 years, before founding De Novo Agency with his partner, James Landry. On the side, Elliot is a freelance musician whose music has amassed over 1 million hits on YouTube, as well as hundreds of thousands of streams on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, and Google Play, all the streaming stuff. Using his experience in the music industry, Elliot has started the record company Funk Factory. I did not know that until I read this today. I want to hear more about the Funk Factory, which is still producing and distributing up-and-coming local New England artists. Welcome, Elliot.
Hey, David, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. And yep, the Funk Factory is definitely something that we do on the side. It's a lot of fun.
What is the Funk Factory, and is there funk involved?
Oh, there's always some funk involved, and it's really just it's like a side little project where we kind of wanted to learn what the business structure of a record label, an independent record label, would kind of start to look and feel like. So it's kind of like a pet project at this time where, like, because I'm a musician, so I like release music under the Funk Factory to kind of like start to learn what it's like to be in that sort of ecosystem so that I can understand it and then help clients, in a year from now, if it's actually an actual business, then I'll actually know how to help them the best way. So that's kind of like a little pet project, but it's fun.
Oh, and that's great.
Any sort of funk is good.
You can't fake the funk, as George would say. Well, it's great because it's funny because I've also, in my musical world, I've hired you guys several times for my own music, and it's partly, of course, I want to get my music performing better, and partly it's me wanting to understand for my clients and for my productions and my artists I work with, how does this ecosystem work? So both, yes. I'm glad to understand how the Funk Factory fits into your strategies. Let me ask you this before we get into the depths of what we're going to get into. Is what were your first musical influences? What inspired you as a youngster to start making music and playing music?
Well, I grew up with a musical dad who, when I was growing up, he was playing his guitar all day, every day. And he had a local, band that would come over and practice at the house. And so I kind of just grew up with a bunch of music stuff around. And then I don't remember how old I was, but I realized that I'm like, oh wait, your dad doesn't play guitar in the house all day. So I kind of grew up with it. And my dad was super into classic rock and the Beatles and all the staples of classic rock. And so I grew up with him, singing in the car and being listen to this guitar solo and going playing air guitar. So he had such an appreciation for music that I definitely got some of that. And it was cool to learn the classic rock side of things and the staples of what all the music you hear today. There's a reason you're still hearing it. If it was made in 1965, if you're still hearing it now, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Then
what do you think that reason is?
Some music is just timeless, and then there's also music that's nostalgic. So people like to hear music because they have a memory associated with the song, or sometime they heard the song, so now they like the song. And but just good music is good music. There's a reason people still bump the Beatles, and there's a ton of bands from the 60s and the 70s that you don't hear a lot of today. So it's almost the market kind of determines the value eventually.
That's great. And did it inspire you to play guitar or bass, or what was your instrument?
When I started, the first thing I played really was guitar because my dad just had them around. So when I was bored, I'm oh, let me try to play this Blink-182 song or something on guitar and see what I can do. And I took some lessons in high school or had a class. And I kind of started, fooling around with guitar. And really my music, I really liked writing songs and kind of like putting together the structure. And I was a big Beatles fan growing up, and like a lot of what the Beatles did was they didn't necessarily like blow you away with like guitar solos and like their music talent. It was like they cracked the code on like how to structure catchy music that casual listeners love, and they just know the tune and like, oh, I like that Hold Your Hand song. And then like, so like they kind of like, and like eventually I was like, well, and like I started recognizing like the formulas and like songs, and like, so it's just like writing like a 5-paragraph essay. Like, there is a format that like, there's a reason there's this format. Like you can make it your own within the format, but the format's kind of the format. So, right. And I really liked hip hop and kind of like funky hip hop. Cause like, obviously like I'm a white kid from New Hampshire. So like the hip hop that I could like get away with making would have to be unique. So I kind of took like some funky and some pop stuff and like some stuff that's like, now I look back and it was pretty cheesy, but it was like fun. And I tried to like figure out how to structure songs and like, learn how to record it myself. And I started fooling around in GarageBand with like my dad's mics and his instruments and kind of just like screwing around. And then like eventually, learned GarageBand, elevated, got like better equipment, went up to Logic, and kind of like, eventually I went to a different studio so they could do it. But it was good to learn the process and kind of learn not only like how to structure a song like in my head and on a piece of paper, but like how to like record it, how to edit it at least somewhat to like a B- level. And eventually I had to like bite the bullet and be like, okay, yeah, I should probably just hire a professional. But I learned, and that's kind of like how I got to where I am, at least in the music business realm of things now, is just through trial and error of doing it myself. Like I was recording a lot of music, my own music. I tried to, book a bunch of my own shows. I got some. I probably did like, 30 or 40 over the course of like 5 years or something. So like not many, but like enough to like know the process, like get paid to do some shows, get like, 500-600 people to show up. Like, yeah, it's a lot of fun, but like, it's a lot of work. And now I kind of, throughout that process of marketing, trying to get a show, like, nobody bats 1,000, everybody steps on a landmine here and there. So now what I kind of have done is taken over the course of that 10 years, I've taken what has worked and I've kind of bundled it, or at least what's worked for me, so I can like provide some sort of guidance where I'm like, well, here's what I did and I messed up here and here. So don't do this. Instead, do this, because I learned my lesson. So like, let's apply the lesson to whatever it is you're doing.
Right.
And that's kind of what we do.
That's great. I mean, I had me thinking, well, if we were in a universe where the Beatles didn't exist and the Beatles were now recording in their garage and uploading the music on DistroKid or something.
Yeah, well, it would be totally different now.
They're like, I got this great song. It's called Yesterday, and I also have this song called Helter Skelter. I'm not quite sure how can I get on playlists? Spotify.
Yeah, right. Well, and it's interesting. Like, I mean, on an extreme level, like the Beatles are a great example of like, they have one song that is super poppy and super, like, I Want to Hold Your Hand, or like Hello Goodbye, like kind of poppy, or like their earlier tunes were all kind of like poppy, not cheesy, but not really a lot of depth to them. I Want to Hold Your Hand, and She Loves You, yeah, like kind of, they're simple, but they're really, really good.
Yeah, they're beautiful and innocent and great and emotional.
Right. Yeah. So what they like on a macro level, they had a product that was widely liked by a lot of casual listeners, that they developed a fan base. And then when they had like the leverage to do whatever they wanted, and after they smoked a bunch of weed with Bob Dylan, they were like, screw it, we're going to do what we want to do, because we have like, we don't have to, you like us, you're going to come to us because we're us. Like, we don't necessarily need to be like, well, they want this kind of pop music. We're like, screw that. We're doing what we want to do, and they're going to like it because we're us.
Right.
So like, and like they still found their target audience in a way. Like the macro strategies are the same. You have a great product, figure out where it is. Like they didn't just immediately have a humongous fan base across the world. Like, it started in the UK, and then it caught on in America for like a while before they even came over here. So it wasn't like they just showed up or they dropped one album and immediately were the biggest thing ever.
Right. It started regionally. So this is good. Let me give a context here. For how your company helps people. And I've hired you several times, and I wanted to bring you in here because I've learned so much about how Spotify works and how the algorithms work, and just it's been so fascinating. So I really wanted to sort of dig into understanding some of the basics of how artists who release their own music can use understand the Spotify algorithms and understand third-party playlists in a way that will give them data to get their music to the next level. Because as we all heard, this 40,000 songs uploaded to Spotify every day. How do we break
Yep.
through? So maybe you could speak a little bit about what someone coming to you needs to understand about the Spotify algorithms and why promotion helps and why playlists help.
Sure.
That was a big basket of stuff on your lap. Go hit me, man.
Yeah, no, well, it all goes together. So the way that first, what is an algorithm? An algorithm is something, it's a tool that is used to collect, organize, and use data. So depending on like the algorithm or the service, what companies do with the algorithm, that's the difference, right? So for example, Instagram uses an algorithm, and algorithms are all used the same way. It's just a matter of what task are you trying to accomplish with it. Instagram, if you put out a post and it gets a lot of engagement, and the algorithm it's looking for a value add for its listeners, its users, and it wants people to, on their news feed or on their explore page, they want everything they see, they want them to be like, this was cool. So an algorithm is trying to determine the value add to their users. So if on Instagram you post
you mean
something,
essentially to how to give them more of what they want.
Exactly. Because
okay.
let's consider like what these platforms are. Like in terms of Instagram and Spotify are different because you don't have to pay to use Instagram. Instead, like people pay to run ads. Spotify, you pay to have a premium account and not have ads. But the algorithm on both companies is their recipe of how to find and distribute value to their users. Spotify doesn't necessarily care about the artists because they are focused on their paying the listeners. Instagram, if you post a picture and it gets a ton of engagement and the algorithm it is adapting on the fly and it's quickly learning. If hypothetically you're posting something and a bunch of people who like Neumann mics, if I'm saying that right, for whatever reason, even something that specific, the algorithm will know, okay, wow, a lot of people who have also liked a bunch of Neumann things are liking this guy's picture and they're engaging with it. Very quickly, that algorithm determines that this content is a value add for people who also are liking Neumann. And it will quickly distribute that value add via the algorithm. And in this case, Instagram, it's the explore page or whatever your stories, however. But it determines.
I want to go back to something you said about
Sure.
on Spotify, that Spotify is less concerned about what the artist's needs are, more concerned with the paying
100%.
customers are. What are the implications to a musician of that?
Yeah. So your job on a macro level is to get enough information to Spotify, feed it enough information, meaning get enough people listening to your music. Each single person is a data point that is inadvertently, inherently creating data for Spotify, and their algorithm is eating all that data to try to figure out patterns. So what you want to teach Spotify is a general idea of who your content is a value add for. Meaning, instead, like a lot of people, I ask them, who's your target audience? And they say, well, I make hip hop. Like, well, that's not a target audience because it could be hip hop, even though it's a specific genre, it's a very wide area. It could be like my uncle who's a big fan of the Beastie Boys, or it could be like my little cousin who likes Lil Uzi Vert. Both in hip hop, very different audiences. So instead of being like, oh yeah, well, I want to show my music to people in hip hop, the more that the artist can understand generally, well, the people who resonate with my music the most are people who are 21 to 25 in these areas who also like artist 1, 2, and 3. Because now instead of, oh, it's hip hop, it's people who like Kid Cudi, Big Sean, and I don't know, somebody else. And, so the more that you can kind of give a description to your target audience, the more that Spotify starts to understand, hey, this content is a value add for people who also like Kid Cudi, Big Sean, and artist number 3. And once Spotify starts to understand what is a value add to who, it's relatively unbiased as to who they're spreading. They don't care. They just want people to stay on Spotify, and they want their listeners to be pumped about, hey, here's your Discover Weekly. Here's 30 songs. If they leave going, 22 of these were awesome, I can't wait to get it next week. That's what they want. If they give them 30 songs and 3 of them they like, they're going to be like, eh.
Right.
Spotify's whole value add is getting casual listeners music that they like without them having to look very hard for. If their only value add was having all of this music available, and it's easy. Oh yeah, any Beatles song I want, I can find real easy. If that was all it was, the difference between Spotify and Apple Music would be a lot closer to 50-50 instead of like 80-20.
Right. So essentially you're saying Spotify it is attempting to be a positive recommendation engine.
Absolutely.
Will, right?
And
it's going give, I like this song, and if without paying attention, send me something I like. I'm going to like, so I'm going to keep working or keep listening and not go, I hate that song. Who is this? Click. Who is this? Speak. Quit. Right.
Right. And it's one thing if the listener is taking it upon themselves to explore. That's one thing. But what the algorithmic playlists are, Discover Weekly, Release Radar, Daily Mix, every single user gets a unique playlist to them. My Discover Weekly is going to be a lot different than yours, or over here. Now it's a mirror.
Yeah.
So that's what they're looking for. Everyone is just inherently creating data. Every move you make. Did you listen to the song twice? Did you listen to it once and come back and listen to it in 3 hours? Or was it 4 days later? Did you listen to it and save it right away? Did you follow the artist? Every move you make is just being categorized. It's looking to find the best way to provide you value. Mm-hmm. Every listener, not the artist. It doesn't care whose content they're spreading. It just wants it to be a value add. And the way that a playlist works, what we do at De Novo is we use playlists as a tool to, streams and monthly listeners are great, but what it really is it's market research. And if you can put a song in a playlist, and if it's targeted within your genre, in this case, we've been talking about hip hop. So we use some hip hop playlists, and we use playlists to cast a wide net into casual listeners. And then Spotify provides tools where you can organize and collect your own data. So they have a ton of data, but they give you some of it. And over time, you'll start to see who's resonating with your music, because it only tracks the data of people who listen and count as a stream, which is more than 30 seconds. So if somebody is listening to a song and they skip it right away, it's not tracking that data. That's bad data in this instance. So playlists use audiences, at least our program uses playlists as a tool to get into an audience. And then the audience is just inherently creating data that not only we can help the artist go over to say, look, it looks like your fans are 20 and they're in New York and they like Big Sean and Jadakiss or whatever. Now you have an idea of the type of listener who's listening to you. You have that idea, and Spotify starts to have the idea. So also on Spotify, the algorithm is what is generating the artist's fans also like page and their radio.
Yeah, I want to get into that. Yeah.
So the algorithm is...
Let me just stop.
Go right ahead.
So in the course of our work together, when I was working on my DJ Trotsky artist stuff, we reached a certain threshold of likes and followers and listens that suddenly there's like, oh, fans also like this. And I was like, oh, look, there's 18 people who also like, if you like DJ Trotsky, you're also going to like these other people who I'd never heard of. And it also created a radio station of DJ Trotsky stuff that I'd never heard of also. But in a certain way, it seemed like the algorithm went, oh, we now have enough data on DJ Trotsky to compare it to other artists to try and see what listeners like, what they're going to want more of. And
Exactly.
Am I getting that right? Am I getting that right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. And you're right. So at the beginning, when you're an artist and the algorithm is starting to learn generally who listens to your music, the first thing to know about the algorithm is it doesn't hear your music. It doesn't say, oh, this guy sounds like him. It's analyzing the data. So if the people who are listening to you are also listening to this guy, then it goes, oh, it's a similar artist. But when you're just starting out, Spotify thinks you're like a newbie, right? Level 1. First, it's okay, you have an audience, great, but you're still like at the level 1. So it'll never compare you to like Avicii, right away, because Avicii's level 100. And so it's going to compare you to people in or around the same like bucket that you're in terms of like just total engagement.
So in terms of how I would translate that is that I wasn't getting on playlists with people who had 10 million followers. I was getting on people with a similar number of followers.
Not necessarily. So
okay.
Even if hypothetically all of your listeners listen to Avicii, but you have 5,000 monthly listeners, it's not going to list Avicii as a similar artist because it doesn't deem your levels of engagement similar. Even the sound or the type of listeners listening, it still doesn't consider Avicii a similar artist because it doesn't consider you like an A1 mainstream artist yet.
Based on the metrics of followers, listeners.
Yeah, so I don't know the exact numbers, but like there are tiers. So like what we've noticed is like when an artist is just starting out at 5 or 10,000 monthly listeners, pretty much all the people that come up and their fans also like are within that window. Then once you get closer to like 20, 25, 30, it kind of updates and it goes up a level and it starts to compare you to other people who also have 25 or 30,000. And then kind of like again at 50. Or I don't know what the exact levels are, but that's what's happening. It's like a ladder. So that's why Avicii and Marshmello are compared because they're both level 100. And whereas you might be level 5, it's comparing you to level 4, 5, and 6 down here. Mm-hmm. And it might know to pair you with people who like Avicii, like via Discover Weekly, but it's not going to say that you guys are similar artists yet.
Right. Even your song may sound similar, it's not getting the same engagement, i.e. number of listeners, i.e. just it wants to create a positive experience for the listener by people that are sort of at their level, and also fans also like it. It's not listening and going, oh yeah, this song sounds just like so-and-so.
Right. Well, and think of it this way, like, if it's, in a way, you almost don't want it to only compare you to the big ones, because then it would compare 100 people who are similar to you to the big one. And only, so everybody who knows Avicii, if I want to go listen to Avicii, I will go listen to him. I don't need to discover Avicii. I know him. Right. But if people who are interested in fans that or artists that have 15, 20,000 monthly listeners, it's going to keep it in that like circuit, because the people who end up there are much more willing to give new artists a try compared to if I want to listen to Marshmello and I only want to listen to the top 20 songs in the country right now, I know where to find them. I don't need to go dig around, right. in these. So like in a good way, once they're in that circuit, that's really great. You just need to kind of become a player. You need to be available. You need to Spotify needs to consider your music a value add for people that look like that.
It's really interesting. And how does the algorithm handle songs by a different artist with a different intensity or different genre or different style? Mm-hmm. Right.
It depends on. It's all about how quickly it can get data to determine that, hey, this is different. So if you're hypothetically Drake, and on the same day you put out one song that's a heavy bass rapping banger, and then like 2 hours later you put out like kind of like a singing softer R&B song, because he has such an audience and it would generate so much data so quickly, it would very quickly be able to see, oh, this song is resonating with these kinds of people. This song is resonating with these kinds of people. But when you're just starting out, it's tough. It's tougher to give it enough data for it to learn, but it will learn. Everything is, the audience will kind of determine for itself what it's working with. And over time, Spotify will learn, hey, okay, this song is for this audience, this song is for this audience. And then there's even another layer where it's like, okay, cool. Well, then this artist is similar to someone who's also who fits in both of these buckets.
Right.
And it's learning. It's just all depending on data. And the only reason it feels like it's working against you, it's not necessarily Spotify. It's just the amount of, it can't spread everything. There are 40,000 songs a day, right? And there are only 30 slots on Release Radar and Discover Weekly, period, for everybody. So there's only so much room. And that means certain songs need to have a certain like projected amount of value that they say, yep, this song fits in the 30.
Interesting. So let's talk about third-party playlists. Let's open up understanding what that kind of is and what that means and how that ecosystem works, and where do those come from and what is a third-party playlist? And
well,
you go ahead.
Yeah, like a lot of companies or a lot of services, there are good ones and there are bad ones. Each playlist, each curator is essentially its own business. So one curator who might be good at putting together playlists, and before I get too far, I want to say one thing. Spotify started out as a playlist. That was its original. It wasn't an algorithm based at the beginning. It was playlist based. And granted, they had their own playlists, but a lot of them were Joe Schmo making playlists and people just found them and liked it and they grew. Spotify started as that kind of platform where normal people like you and I can make a playlist and it can get a following and cool. Sooner or later, people realized that there was a business to be had where if I'm a good curator and I can walk the line of having a good playlist where the people who I have who follow won't be deterred to come back. But if I put good music in here, if I sell slots, there's a lot of people looking for audiences that will pay for it. So what we have done at DeNovo is kind of become that broker over the course of 6 years of doing this. We know how to audit. There's a lot of people doing a lot of BS out there because it's relatively easy to go to a bot and say, hey, I want 10,000 streams on Spotify, and they'll come in 2 hours and then that's it, boom, done. Clearly fake. Eventually Spotify is going to catch on and kick you off, and you don't want that. It's not in the business of paying royalties for fake streams. So it will find you. And unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do to figure out who's legit and who's not until after like they're in the playlists. But there's a lot
before I hired you guys, I think I unfortunately stumbled on a fake playlist company, promised organic, but then, all the users' names were VXWZ79000 or something like that. So it was clearly fake. I was like, oh shit, I hope I don't get busted.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times if you do it once, Spotify knows that there's a lot of people sleazy, and like most artists aren't willingly saying, yeah, let's try to trick them and get a bunch of fake streams. So if it only happens once or twice and you kind of like can pick up on it and be like, this doesn't look legit, and you kind of stop, Spotify doesn't execute you.
Okay,
but
good.
if you do it for 6 months, exactly. So like, and often what they'll do is they'll send a warning to whoever you're using as a distributor, and the distributors are in the business of keeping Spotify happy. So actually what will happen is if Spotify has a particular threshold of what they think is fake, the distributors will have a slightly tighter version so that they flag it before Spotify does. And they say, hey, artists, I'm not accusing you of anything. It just looks fishy. And if this continues, we're taking you down. Some of them don't even say that. Some of them say, we've taken you down and you can't distribute this music here with us anymore because we think it's fake. And they're not in the business of paying for fake, engagement. So a lot of the ways that you can find the red flags. The first one is if it sounds too good to be true, it is. 2, nobody can guarantee you spots on Spotify playlists. The independently curated ones are one thing. If it's from Elliot Towsley making it, that's one thing. But if anyone's telling you they can get you on Rap Caviar for $1,000, they're full of it. It's not how it works. Then 3rd, look at the guarantees. If it's an actual audience from a company perspective, I can't guarantee, if I put you in front of 50,000 people, I can't guarantee that all of them are going to listen to it or check out that playlist this month. Like, I can't, if any company is guaranteeing a set amount of streams, that's usually a huge red flag. It's one thing if they give you an estimate, but if they're saying you're going to get exactly 20,000 streams for $100.
Right.
That's weird. Or if they're like giving an exact, you'll get 1,500 follows and 100 saves. Like, what if everyone in the audience loves it? Do I only get 1,500 follows? What if nobody likes it? Do I still get? You don't know if it's legit. If every single person is a human being, you can't predict and give guarantees on human activity. Even the thing we're noticing that if within campaigns that we started before a lot of the protests, like a lot of people were not listening to music. They were out in the street demonstrating. And so like, if we had done a guarantee, like, yeah, we guarantee you're going to get 50,000 streams, and then something happens in the world and people aren't listening to music, what now?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So,
well, let's just talk about actually what's happening in the streaming market's the wrong word, but just metrics. So what's happening this summer? I think streams up, down. I saw some guy today post it. Good time to release music, he said, because the majors are not releasing right now. They're sitting on their stuff. What's your guys' take on? And then I know also I'll throw this out. You're also sort of one of James' themes is always like, don't release, market your own stuff. Don't release, market your own stuff. But there seems to be an opportunity. And now, so what's your take on the current market, the timing of releasing new material now, meaning the summer?
Great question. I just don't buy into the premise of like, well, you got to be consistent, release a new song every Friday. Like, so often you hear examples of people who like did that, and it's like, yes, Russ did do that, but he wasn't doing that when he had 1,000 monthly listeners. He had 400,000 who would every Friday he gave them a song and it would organically market itself. So yes, it works for Russ. And you're right. The majors aren't releasing big projects right now because big projects, they want to lead to big tours, big shows, big other opportunities to make money because they're not making a killing on streaming alone. So, I mean, I don't think that now is a great time to throw out a big project that you've been like waiting to put out just because, oh, cool, like, why not? There's never a need to release new music strictly for the sake of being new. The best time to release new music is when you have a plan and the resources to market it effectively. And like you said, actually during this coronavirus, like at the beginning, all the distributors were reporting that they were releasing more music than ever before. So, but the catch-22 is streaming during the coronavirus, since this has kind of happened and there's been like the lockdown, streaming's down about 20%. So now the formula you have to fight against is more music being released than ever and 20% less streams to go around. So to me, that sounds like a losing formula to fight against. I actually think now is a great time to stay working in the studio, stay finishing up music. But if you have 8 songs on your catalog and 7 of them have less than 10,000 streams, you already have a bunch of new music to people. Like the song that you have in your back pocket that has 0 streams compared to the one that's got less than 1,000 that's out is the same amount of new to a new listener. So like, to me, it doesn't make sense to just throw out new music for the sake of being new. It's one thing if you have a plan and you have a strategy and this is the song I'm going for, that's one thing. Right. I don't agree with the strategy of just release new music all the time. To who? You don't have an audience.
Right. Well, so like the Chainsmokers seem to release a new song or 2 every 8 weeks, right?
And then the Chainsmokers stuff.
Chainsmokers, but yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is that of course, they've got a massive following and with good collaborations and stuff. But I'm finding, I know artists I'm speaking to, we're sitting on. I was planning to release 4 songs this year. They were all done and mastered and in the can. And I've released 2, and I got 2 ready to go when I'm actually releasing next week. And I've so I'm sitting on finished stuff, right? So how long do I sit on it? And what I'm hearing is, if you've got a plan, which I do for this current more politically aware song, actually. So it's like, it's a good time when I release before July 4th, and we're making a video for it that's relevant to this moment. But yeah,
Right.
I'm just thinking about the whole, when I agree, once a week kind of ridiculous unless you're doing YouTube covers. But
Right.
if we're creating faster than we can market.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the thing is independent artists have a limited amount of resources. So like, it's much more effective to find, if you have 10 songs, and if it's much more effective to find the song of those 10 that seems to resonate with people the most, and then market that song 10 times to 10 different groups of people. It's much more effective to do that than it is to just release 10 new songs and hope that like the momentum carries over. If you have 100,000 monthly listeners, different story. You have a following, different story. If you're getting started, it's much more effective to work with what you got. Keep the finished things. Obviously, it's great to have finished music, but it's like playing chess. The more pieces you have, the more you can plan, and the more you can start to plan 2 or 3 steps ahead, rather than just, hey, it's Thursday, it's time for a new song. Let's release it to my 1,200 people that are my monthly listeners that haven't checked out the last song yet.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So it's what you want to do is, if you have 5 or 6 songs, that's plenty to start promoting, see what works, and to start to get Spotify on your side now. Start to build up an audience now that you then release new stuff to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So this has been really great. It's really great. Before we talk about your free download gift, anything else that you wanted to hit that we didn't cover yet today, and just other final thoughts or suggestions? Or
just don't make the music you want to make. People like me shouldn't be telling you how to make the music. Like, if you are a company and you have a product and you want help marketing your product, it's not my job to come in and tell you how to make your product. My job is to say, if this is your product, let's figure out where we can sell it. And everything is relying on data. So you need data, because just going to a record label or just going to a venue or a bigger artist that you want on your song, just having a song is not enough. You need to say, here's my audience, here's what I bring to the table. If I share you, you're going to get 5,000 listeners on your page too. Something. Or, hey, venue, I have 1,000 people in your city already. I bet if I do a show in 2 months, I can get 200 of them to show up. That hits a lot harder than, here's my song. Isn't it good? Can you help me out? Because they're not going to give a damn, because they're running a business too. So acquire data to not only figure out who you can sell to, but the data itself is a tool to build leverage and seal the deal with business opportunities.
That's great. Right. So, we are entrepreneurs, and we have to have some metrics to make the case and figure out where to spend the marketing promotion money, basically.
Yep.
That's great. That's great. So tell me, what is our free download going to be today?
Yeah. So we have this thing called, we call it a toolkit. It's just a toolkit for independent artists. And what it is, it's a bunch of tools. Most of them are free. And it's just essentially a guide that we recommend taking a look at to kind of get the business end of your music, get a lot of those things buttoned up, and a lot of little tips that in a whole will make a big impact. Nothing is life changing in there, but a lot of little things, a lot of little tweaks that will help you grow a business smoothly. That's outside of the actual music itself.
Right. That's great. That's great. That's great. Yeah, I think I downloaded that when I first became aware of your company, and I found some really great stuff, and it helped me understand how you approach things, and it's great.
Yeah. And one thing I'll highlight in there is my business partner, James, is an attorney. So one of the questions we get all the time is like, should I set up an LLC? Do I need to copyright my name or my song? And this guide gives a lot of great insight onto like things you need to be worried about, things you don't need to be worried about, like a copyright. And also we include a template in there for split sheets, so that when you're probably a good example, when you're doing somebody is singing on your music, a split sheet is really handy to say, everyone understands what their cut is. Everyone understands who owns what. Sign here. Thank you. Nice. See you later. And that's free. A lot of people will charge for that. We just take it.
That's great. That's great. Okay, beautiful. I know that's great. So that'll be your free download for the summit. So folks on the summit, I want to hear your thoughts on the Facebook page, questions for Elliot, comments, things you learned, things you're still confused about. Maybe we can bring Elliot and maybe James in for a Facebook Live on the summit group sometime. We'll see how our schedules align, but I'd love to have you guys in, and please pull your questions in, give us your comments. I want to know what you learned, what you need to know more about. And Elliot, thank you so much for being with me on the summit today. I'm just so glad I was able to present your view on this. It's not something I hear about a lot. So
awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to help. And anyone who's interested, check out our podcast, the Business of Music podcast. Check out our YouTube channel. We give a lot of information just away. And then if you have any questions about how we can use playlists to help you market and grow on Spotify, we're happy to help.
Yeah, that's great. They also do Facebook Lives, Instagram Lives every once in a while. So a lot of resources. It's such a new area, understanding for me, as most artists I talk to don't understand what I've learned by working with you guys. So it's even sometimes I've come to your Instagram, Facebook Live, and I go, oh yeah, that's what they said the last 3 times. It's starting to finally sink in. It's new and it's complicated. It's like, what does this mean to me and my music? And so
yep.
It's really great. So I'm really happy to present you and look forward to more. All right, we're going to sign off here and see you guys in the Facebook group. And thanks again, Elliot. Talk to you soon.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay, great.